time to tell you what I uncovered this week. If you have a bath bag and a stiff hanky to catch the tears of suspense and disquiet, allow me to begin. Do not run. No, do not run. Just patiently listen and accept what I am about to say. It could be paramount to acute judgment in a time of furtive crisis that will decide the fate of your life. Their names, Mr. and Mrs. Kenneth Blankenstaff, a couple with a moral and credulity problem, who were soon to find themselves trapped inside the wings of fate they had hoped to pluck. Location, Boonton, New Jersey. Date, 1989. Your goofy pagan rituals are garbage, Mr. Blankenstaff told his wife as they drove along I-80 away from New York City. They had just spent a few hours watching a doped-up witch purportedly channel an ancient goddess named Milcom, the god of the Ammonites. His wife began to blow up like a volcano, spewing fiery words and landing fists on Mr. Blankenstaff, while he steered a steady path, despite her reckless stupidity. Karen Blankenstaff was a fervently anti-Christian witch with a hatred of anything that didn't feed her ego. Kenneth knew this, and frequently enjoyed getting her upset in order to prove to himself that she was a weak and idiotic woman, who was little more than a sex baby chamber for his seed. Kenneth didn't appreciate anything other than pure intelligence, logic, rationality, and therefore he greatly appreciated a stupid wife to be at his side, because it didn't challenge his wonderful apex intellect within their family unit. This reinforced a steady family structure, free of that silly Christ-centric stuff the sheep had cleaved to for the past couple millennia. Anyway, the Blankenstaffs were a successful family unit, as they called it, with 2 young boys coming close to grade school age. All 4 were present in the car that day. Best to ignore that moronic utterance, Kenneth told his wife. It is the babble of an opiated mind hoping to engage an audience of desperate seekers, yearning for a glimpse of hope in their illogical and lazy lives. Karen grew ever more furious. Kenneth left the world behind and relived the moments that created the couple's present furor. In the middle of a darkened room filled with wispy incense smoke and cloaked zealots of the dark arts, a creepy female mumbled prophetic words. His wife had approached the emaciated human channeler with a folded piece of paper containing a request. The paper didn't need to be opened for the psychic to know what was written therein, and an answer was swiftly delivered. "When you lose your heads," the strung-out figure croaked, "you will be in a crash. A crash. I see a plane." And then the soothsayer faded into some other line of thought directed at someone else in the room. Karen fainted at the prophetic words. After removing her to their car, Kenneth found his wife's question written on the paper was simply, "How will my family die?" ? Kenneth instantly decided to ignore and scoff. Karen took it as canon, and thus the arguing continued until the family had returned home that day. And even beyond, the arguing carried on for weeks, months. It was so ever-present and invasive into their daily routine that their smallest child, Moonsmith, age 4, developed a gripping fascination with aeroplanes. Kenneth secretly egged on the child, and that alone drove his wife even closer to insanity as she dwelt on the grim prophecy. One day, Kenneth was even able to trick his wife to get on a plane with the kids and himself, revealing to her what was happening once they entered the airport. The tickets were already paid for. The children and father and mother were scheduled to fly to her parents' house across country. Karen exploded, then deflated, and finally was an inconsolable mess for the next hours as they scooped her onto the plane and flew her across country. Kenneth loved seeing his wife being proved wrong. He loved seeing Moonsmith indulging in a flight. And when it was all done, Kenneth could prove her right and wrong. She obviously was wrong for being a ridiculous spectacle the whole trip. But she was possibly right, because no one had lost their head aside from her. So therefore there was no way they would die. His wife was growing to loathe him, but something about his logic was so fascinating and intoxicating. So she humped him silly and created a third child within. Kenneth was king. He knew it. Life was good. Yet tragedies with planes kept occurring to them. It would drive him closer to wonder, and Karen closer to disillusion. One day, they were driving down the highway when a single-prop plane crashed into the highway mere feet behind them as they sped along. Another time, they went to pick up his parents from the airport, and as the elders disembarked, a huge airliner mislanded and skidded across the taxi routes, plunging nose first into the terminal where they had been standing mere moments before. Another time, a plane crashed into houses near theirs in the suburbs. It killed several families in a flash of fuel and fire, but they and their home were untouched. Kenneth would merely laugh at death, celebrating the events for their ability to crush his wife's security and mental stability. Karen would cling desperately to Kenneth, his assured and rigid logic being the only rock to which she could adhere and keep her head above the seas of turbulent dementia. One thing was certain: the family of four, one on the way, was unscathed by all these close calls. And finally, Kenneth was trying to pry his reluctant wife back onto a plane, knowing she'd never go, only to relent and seem a caring white knight. He was bluffing. They'd all drive in a family sedan across country to her parents' house for that Thanksgiving. And so they did. They did. All four were comfortably tucked into their spacious car and out for a sightseeing tour before their arrival. Karen sighed so hard and relaxed so much that she slept almost constantly on their journey. They went down I-80 to I-40 and then into the southwest. Being in the car for this trip was so empowering to her, her body and her mind, giving her a well-needed rest that she craved for months. Nothing could go wrong on this sojourn. They were in a car. Her entire being began to recuperate from months of endless stress. Just outside of Grants, New Mexico, driving on Interstate 40 West, Karen resurfaced from her prolonged daily naps to see the beautiful desert around them. It was a wonder to a person from the densely populated New York area. Everything was so open and refreshing and natural. It was paradise. And her bliss was swiftly decimated by the image of a plane in front of her face. Her youngest Moonsmith was waving around a small metal model of a passenger jet. It freaked out the mother, and she slapped it from his hands. "Moonsmith!" Karen exploded at her son. "Easy, babes," Kenneth calmed her down. "I bought it for the boy. He craved it when we saw it in a gift shop back around Albuquerque. It is just a toy." The explanation brought no relief to the enraged woman. It was so annoyingly pervasive a tantrum that Kenneth lost sight of the road for a few seconds. When he regained perception ahead, they were feet from the back of a big rig. "No!" screamed the father. All the Blankenstaffs looked forward, heads up to witness as they crashed into the slower vehicle ahead. And that was when they all lost their heads. The 18-wheeler, you see, didn't have a safety bar installed in the rear to keep an accident turning brutally fatal. Their car slid directly under the body of the rig between the back tires, and the roof was sheared off of their sedan, along with all four heads of the passengers. A swift demise. An hour later, the emergency crews and firemen were cleaning away the gooey remains of that terrible tragedy. One of the firemen approached a policeman nearby who was taking down all the particulars in order to write a report. "Do you know exactly what happened?" the policeman queried of the fireman. "Death by plane," the fireman said plainly before depositing Moonsmith's metal jetliner toy in the hand of the policeman. "We found this lodged under the brake pedal. The car was unable to stop," the fireman said. And for flippant fun, the fireman made a vocalization of a blade cutting off his head while he ran his left hand across his neck's flesh. So you see, who was right in this case? Kenneth denied the supernatural, but Karen denied rational behavior and logic. And the pair created the perfect conditions for their own demise. Case closed. Like and subscribe before I die. And ring the little bell or you will surely go to hell.
Oh, we're telling spooky stories. This is not a spooky story. Oh, there's no way on the couch I can say.
Depends how you look at it. It is kind of spooky.
I guess so.
Wait, that's it? That's the end of the story?
Is it?